What's going on, y'all? It's your boy Cool Colas here, and you are now tuning into a new video on my channel. But before we get all into the topic for today, I would love it if you did a few things. Hit the like button, subscribe button, share button, and the bell icon so you get notifications for whenever I come out with new content on this channel. And then when you are finished watching this video, I would love it if you left me a comment below, and I'll get back to it when the video is finished. For today's topic, I want to talk about why they absolutely should have recasted T'Challa's role. And I want to give you 4 good reasons why they should have recasted him. So let's get into it. For those of you all who do not know, today is the 2nd year anniversary of when they released the Black Panther Wakanda Forever movie. So I wanted to do this video because I thought it would be interesting to talk about a topic and recirculate a topic that I had talked about many times on Instagram. I've given my stance on this, but for those of you all who are just not clear on what it is, I just want to make sure that I say this to you. T'Challa should have been recasted. T'Challa should have been recasted. T'Challa should have absolutely been recasted, y'all. It's as simple as that. But I want to give you all 4 reasons why he should have been recasted. So the first reason why I believe they should have recasted T'Challa is because they screwed up T'Challa's character anyway. I mean, if you look at Captain America Civil War and Black Panther, you can see how they slowly made him a weaker individual. And what I mean by weaker is they made him an individual who wasn't assertive and couldn't stand on business. I mean, they made him, in my opinion, go from like not addressing certain things such as, you know, the Baron Zemo and Hydra basically offing his daddy and all this other stuff. They went from that type of thing, him not addressing that, to him just being a full-blown wimp. Because T'Challa was somebody who was allowing other people, specifically the women of Wakanda, to drive his decisions and change his mind when he already had his mind set. So let me give you an example of what I mean by that. Originally in the first Black Panther movie, he kind of took the same stance as the Eagle Clan from Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes. So essentially he was trying to isolate himself from the rest of society. That's what the Eagle Clan was trying to do. They were trying to isolate themselves so that they weren't coming into contact with the Echoes, which really were the humans, and allegorically were the white supremacists. T'Challa, to some extent, was trying to do the same thing. He was trying to separate himself from the powers that be in the Western world. And as a result of him trying to make this decision, he was constantly browbeat and undermined by the women of Wakanda, because you even had Nakia's ass, who was sitting there talking about how, you know, T'Challa, you need to share your resources with the world and United Nations and all this other shit. So what essentially she was trying to do was say that we needed to embrace integration, and we needed to take our resources and integrate them with the rest of the world to make the world a better place. But ultimately what she was missing, and I think T'Challa to some extent was trying to avoid, was the idea that we could be colonized and all this other stuff. So he knew that there was this possibility that they were going to colonize Africa, or specifically Wakanda, because of him letting them in. Now, this relates strongly to what happens in our real life. If you think about, you know, these, as I said, Western powers, these white supremacists, they actually go over to places like Africa, they colonize it, and they take their precious resources and they basically leave them living in shanty towns and in the dust. So ultimately, he was trying to avoid that. He almost took like this North Sentinel Island approach when he was ruling Wakanda for the first time. But again, he was constantly undermined by the women of Wakanda. And he almost went from being somewhat of a Martin Luther King Jr. figure to being Barack Obama. Because think about how when he was fighting Claw and he was about to off him, how Okoye had stopped him and had said, "T'Challa, the world is watching." That showed you that he was almost taking a Barack Obama stance, and they were taking a Michelle Obama stance, where Michelle basically in a certain way, and well, the women of Wakanda in a certain way were saying, when they go low, we go higher. which I hate that saying, by the way, because we as blacks need to embrace the saying, when they go low, we break them ankles. When it comes to this character coming off kind of weak, I compare him often to the BET version. If you ever look at that BET Black Panther series, T'Challa there was assertive, he was strong, and he stood on something. And that was especially shown with his fight with Captain America. It showed that he understood that colonization was afoot, and it was something that he needed to address, and it was something that he needed to prevent. So he was willing to even expose the white privilege and even the suspected white supremacy of Captain America, him coming over and being a part of the United States colonization of Wakanda and their resources. And then he tagged that ass. That's the type of T'Challa that I was hoping to see in this film, but I didn't get him. I got the one who really couldn't stand up to the women because the women lacked vision. So that was one of the reasons why I felt like they needed a redo. Now, I'm saying all this from the premise of I'm the writer and this is the way that I would make the character. And I realized too that Marvel would not do this because, again, they do not want to show the image of a black man who stands on business, if they show the image of a black man at all. So I understand that, but I wanted to make it clear that this was a possibility and this was something that I personally would have liked to see. By the way, aren't you kind of surprised that they actually showed him in that light in the BT, show? Because I am. The second reason why I believe that they should have recasted T'Challa is because there's so much more that they could have done with his character. They could have had him facing Doctor Doom. They could have had him facing Kraven the Hunter instead of giving him a movie that we all know is going to bomb. They could have really had him face Namor. But they didn't do that. They just got rid of the character altogether. And think about all the times where they've actually replaced different heroes and villains that were non-black. I mean, think about how many different versions of Spider-Man that we've had. We've had the Tobey Maguire one. We've had the Andrew Garfield one. We had the Tom Holland one. Some of y'all could say, well, it's a different universe. Stop all that. Because even with Spider-Man, they all ended up being in the same universe, showing that they were having some type of crossover to a certain extent. They've acknowledged that they've changed this character. So they've also had it with villains as well, too. Think about in DC when they had Joker. They've had millions of types of Jokers. I mean, you've had literally a Joker in The Dark Knight. You've had Jokers in the DCEU movies. You had the Joker in Gotham. You had the Joker in the cartoons. You had the Joker in Batwoman, if you really think about it. So you've had all these different places where they've actually shown a different type of Joker, and nobody said something like, because Heath Ledger died, nobody should ever play the Joker. It just wasn't really a thing. Another thing that I had to think about too is, did Chadwick Boseman really say that he didn't want anyone else to play him? Or was this made up somewhere to cover up some other narrative? Because from my perspective, I felt like it was a cover up. It was, it was too soon. It was this, it was that. Oh, the cultural impact, the way it would have affected yada, 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 yada. Stop it, y'all. Just stop it. And my thing is, when you say too soon, my thing is, too soon for what? Too soon for people to accept the fact that at times there will be other actors who will play a different role. I mean, there's so many different things that they could have done. I mean, they could have done something weird where there was a different universe's T'Challa who showed up and then he was interacting with this universe's Shuri and all this other stuff. And they could have even made the way that he presented himself different, where they had conflict and Shuri was upset and she was saying, well, you're not my brother, and all this other stuff. They could have done all types of things with this new T'Challa that they created, and had him, present in a certain way. And so they'll make a bunch of excuses. They'll say that, it wasn't the right timing, he had just passed, it would undermine somebody else who was coming into that role and all this other stuff. But ultimately, they were doing this out of deceit. They were doing this because they wanted to craft the agendas and the narratives that they wanted to craft. The third reason why I believe they should have recasted T'Challa is because it would have given rise to creating opportunities for new or current even Black and African actors to showcase their talent. So I don't know about you all, but personally, I have this dilemma where I really like cultural accuracy when it comes to roles that involve Black people. And the reason why is because you have too many of these roles, such as these trauma porn, trauma sauce type of movies where you see like the slave-esque type of themes. And it portrays an FBA character in chattel slavery and is played by a non-FBA actor or actress. And the reason why I typically don't like to see that type of theme is because they often aren't embodying the essence of what a lot of foundational Black Americans went through in chattel slavery. And they, as a result, too, don't understand our struggle. And even at times, not every non-FBA has done this, but even at times, some of these non-FBAs will go and they will say disrespectful things about foundational Black Americans who have ancestors who went through chattel slavery, while also just having played somebody who was FBA, just because we have the same skin tone and maybe some of the same features. I think that, you know, a lot of times these actors and actresses get hired because of the fact that they will work for less money. And on top of that too, because they don't have the same camaraderie and whatnot, they won't refuse these types of roles. They just want any opportunity that they can get. And as a result too, when they get into these movies, these slave-esque movies, they essentially reawaken the depression that gets within our spirits because we know what our ancestors have been through. It reawakens, you know, dampening the energy that we have created and the way that we have been trying to move on from the bad parts of what happened with slavery, which is why you don't see a lot of FBAs, in recent at least, creating slave-esque types of movies. You haven't really seen them being in those. You haven't really seen a lot of FBAs be in slave-esque type of movies. You know, a lot of times, I believe that because of that reason, we should try to stay clear of, you know, this cultural inaccuracy, because there's a certain reason why it's being done, is what I'm getting at. And when it comes to cultural inaccuracy, I actually would prefer an African person play T'Challa. And again, that's no slight to Chadwick Boseman. I thought he did a phenomenal job, because we all know that T'Challa was FBA because he was Gullah Geechee. But at the same time, I would have liked to have seen an African actually play T'Challa as well. And this actually would have given great opportunity for that to still have happened. So there's many people that they could have chosen. I mean, think about it. They could have chosen Damson Idris. They could have chosen Yalan Noel. He was the guy who played Daniel in Insecure. I mean, they could have chosen Aldous Hodge. I don't know if he's FBA or not, but they could have chosen him as well too. There's many people who could have actually played in that role. And even if they didn't have a known actor, they could have had an actor that we have never even heard of before play in that role and play T'Challa and actually get the shine that they deserve. Now, again, a lot of the people who I described have the look, but we all know folks like Damson Idris have the actual acting ability and the chops and things like that. So there's a lot of different people that they could have, you know, actually put in that role. And my thing is, this would have been a perfect opportunity to take somebody who was a non-foundational Black American actor and actually have them portray somebody like T'Challa. The fourth and last reason why I believe that they should have recasted T'Challa is because with them not recasting T'Challa, it became a gateway for agendas, and it specifically created a gender divide. As I said earlier in this video, the women of Wakanda lacked vision. They needed male leadership. And the first movie essentially was about male leadership and essentially fatherhood as well too. And that was totally missing from this movie. And my feeling is they missed it on purpose. it felt like when they got rid of T'Challa, that gave them a green light to get rid of any other male character, which is why you only saw one main male character, and that was M'Baku, and they made him into a clown, and they had him even losing arm wrestling fights with 80-pound soaking wet Shuri, which doesn't make any sense whatsoever. But going back to the whole leadership thing, they lacked vision. And the reason why they lacked vision is because they essentially wanted T'Challa to greenlight these different integrationalist narratives and, forgiving people and all this other stuff. And if you really think about it, what ended up happening was everything that Killmonger had projected would happen and everything that T'Challa was trying to prevent would happen ended up happening anyway. Because think about it, the French, which really were white supremacists, came over and they tried to colonize Wakanda now that they let the floodgates down and all this other stuff. So they actually still had a lot of colonizers still coming for them. And the women of Wakanda had no vision because what they were trying to do was make it seem like this was just a way for them to showcase how they were still powerful even without the men. When in actuality, them running their mouths and committing treason and all this other stuff actually was the gateway for the problems that they have. So in other words, they were looking for people to give them gold medals for solving the problems that they actually created and could have prevented. This movie ultimately was meant to divide black men and black women. And the reason why is because they wanted to put us at odds to basically have it where black men were saying, hey, look at all of the black male representation that you actually took out of this movie, and look at all the black woman representation that you put in this movie, and also look at the mentality of the women that are left in this movie and that are seen as lovable in the way that they have been portrayed. And then other black women, especially the blurred women, are seeing this and they're saying, hey, look, you're undermining black women because look, we finally got shine, yada, 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 yada. So they did that to really create a divide at the end of the day. Because what they really wanted was for there to be two woman king movies, because that's essentially what they did. They had this other woman king-esque type of movie by putting that in Black Panther, which really is an agenda, because this should be a comic book movie. This should be something literally based on comic books and the way it happened. It shouldn't be a mechanism to create agendas where they are dividing black men and black women, where they're making black women leaders who have poor leadership skills, where they're trying to craft other agendas such as a black and brown coalition. It shouldn't have been for that, but it was used for that purpose, which is why I said that oftentimes when you have different media mechanisms and different TV shows and movies that are portrayed, they are not just art. They are mechanisms and tools that are used to divide people and are used to make it where they can put in the messages that they want to put in there, because ultimately it's supposed to indoctrinate and ultimately shape society in the way that we see it. And then they tried to even justify the whole thing with Shuri by saying, oh, she was in the comics. She was in the comics. Listen, y'all, I don't know who needs to hear this, but I just need to say this so that you all are very clear. Shuri was interim Black Panther in the comics. She wasn't like, it wasn't this thing of a, you have now had the moniker passed down to you, Shuri. She was interim Black Panther. She was the substitute teacher Black Panther. I just want to make it clear to y'all that she was the person who stepped in because the main guy wasn't there. Even then, I'm not trying to disrespect, Shuri's character or Letitia Wright. I think she did a phenomenal job. I think my point is that they were trying to justify their divide by trying to make her be the head person when they really could have just literally had another T'Challa, another Black Panther who was, from a different universe, who was able to, come into this series. Now, from my perspective, they could have done a lot with this. They could have had it where they eventually teased the relationship with Storm, because maybe Marvel got the rights so that they could make an X-Men movie and Storm could have came in. They could have separated him from Nakia, because beyond Lupita Nyong'o, who is very beautiful, very, very beautiful, but beyond that, I really did not like the T'Challa, the Nakia character. They changed the character from her being this crazy woman who was obsessed with loving and killing T'Challa. But ultimately, they made it where she was an actual love interest. I did not care for that. And her character, ever since she tried to create that whole United Nations shit, I just really wasn't, I was more not with her. So ultimately, these are the reasons why I feel like they could have actually, recasted him instead of doing what they've done. All right, y'all. I hope you all enjoyed this video. I hope you enjoyed what I had to say, and I'll definitely have more to come, so stay tuned. Other than that, I hope y'all have a great rest of y'all's day. Peace.